In a quiet corner of space, far away from Earth, there was a small asteroid mining station named Delta 7. It wasn't much to look at, just a cluster of metal buildings and drilling equipment clinging to the rocky surface of a lifeless asteroid. The station's purpose was simple: extract rare minerals from the ground and send them back to Earth for use in advanced technology. But for the two people stationed there, it was home. Caleb, a man with short brown hair and a friendly smile, spent most of his days fixing machines that were always breaking down. He had a knack for understanding how things worked, whether it was an old drill or a malfunctioning control panel. His hands were often stained with grease, but he didn't mind. To him, repairing something felt like solving a puzzle, and he loved puzzles. Caleb liked to whistle while he worked, filling the otherwise silent station with cheerful tunes. Emma, on the other hand, was different. She was quieter, more focused, and spent her time studying tiny organisms that somehow managed to survive. In the harsh conditions of the asteroid, her workspace was filled with petri dishes, microscopes, and notebooks filled with scribbled notes. Emma had a curious mind and a sharp wit, and she often teased Caleb about his habit of talking to the machines as if they could hear him. Despite their differences, the two got along well. They were friends who relied on each other, especially since they were the only humans for millions of miles. Life on Delta 7 was predictable. Every morning, Caleb would check the equipment, making sure everything was running smoothly. Then he'd join Emma for a quick meal before heading off to fix whatever new problem had popped up overnight. Emma would spend her time analyzing samples, or writing reports to send back to Earth. The days were long, but they were peaceful. That is, until the shaking started. It happened without warning. One moment, Caleb was tightening a bolt on a drill, and the next, the entire station quaked. Violently, tools clattered to the floor, and Emma nearly fell out of her chair. What was that? She called out, her voice tinged with alarm. Caleb didn't answer right away. He grabbed onto a railing to steady himself and looked outside through one of the station's thick windows. At first, all he saw was the usual gray expanse of the asteroid's surface. But then, something massive blocked his view. A ship, a huge, sleek vessel unlike anything he'd ever seen, was descending from the sky. Its surface shimmered with strange patterns that seemed to shift and change as it moved closer. Caleb's heart raced. "Emma," he said, his tone serious now. "You need to see this." Emma hurried over, her eyes widening as she took in the sight. "Is that an alien ship?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb nodded. Neither of them had ever expected to encounter extraterrestrial life, let alone have it show up at their remote outpost. For a moment they just stood there, frozen in awe and disbelief. The ship landed not far from the station, kicking up clouds of dust that obscured its shape for a few moments. When the dust settled, the true size of the vessel became clear. It towered over the mining equipment, dwarfing everything around it. Then a hatch opened, and creatures emerged. They were tall, taller than any human, with elongated limbs and bodies covered in a shiny, insect-like exoskeleton. Their heads were angular, with large, multifaceted eyes that glinted in the dim light. They moved with a strange, jerky grace, clicking and chirping to one another in a language neither Caleb nor Emma could understand. Caleb instinctively reached for a handheld translator device that Emma had brought along for her research. It was designed to decode unfamiliar languages, though it had mostly been used to interpret animal sounds back on Earth. He activated it and held it up, hoping it might make sense of the aliens' communication. After a few tense seconds, the device emitted a series of beeps and displayed text on its screen. "We require resources. Provide access immediately." Emma frowned. "That doesn't sound like a request," she muttered. Caleb nodded grimly. "Yeah, I don't think they're here to chat." He glanced at Emma, trying to gauge her reaction. She looked nervous, but determined. "What do we do?" she asked. Before Caleb could answer, one of the aliens stepped forward, pointing a long, spindly limb toward the station. More text appeared on the translator. "Compliance is mandatory. Resistance will result in termination." Caleb swallowed hard. "Okay, maybe we should try talking to them," he suggested. "Let's explain that we're just miners." We can share what we've got." Emma hesitated, but eventually agreed. Together, they stepped outside, raising their hands to show they meant no harm. Caleb spoke slowly and clearly, even though he knew the aliens wouldn't understand him directly. "We're humans," he said. "We're not fighters. We're just trying to survive out here, same as you." For a moment, it seemed like the message might get through. The aliens paused, tilting their heads, as if considering his words. But then, one of them raised a weapon, a sleek metallic device that hummed with energy, and fired. A bright beam shot out, striking Caleb squarely in the chest. He gasped, his body jerking violently before collapsing to the ground. Emma screamed, rushing to his side. "Caleb, no!" she cried, tears streaming down her face. But it was too late. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and uneven. The aliens clicked among themselves, seemingly indifferent to the life they had just taken. Emma stared at them, her grief quickly turning to anger. "Why did you do that?" she shouted, her voice trembling. He was unarmed. He wasn't a threat. One of the aliens responded, their speech translated again by the device. Resistance was detected. Action was necessary. Emma clenched her fists, fury burning inside her. She wanted to lash out, to fight back, but she knew she couldn't. Take on these creatures alone. Not yet. Swallowing her rage, she backed away slowly, dragging Caleb's limp body toward the safety of the station. Once inside, she locked the doors and collapsed against the wall, sobbing uncontrollably. Caleb was gone, and there was nothing she could do to bring him back. But as she sat there, overwhelmed by grief, a thought began to form in her mind. She couldn't let his death be meaningless. These aliens had underestimated them, thinking humans were weak and powerless. They had no idea what humanity was truly capable of. Wiping her tears, Emma stood up. Her legs still shook, but her resolve was firm. She wouldn't let them win. Not today. Not ever. After locking herself inside the station, Emma sat in silence for a long time. Her mind was a storm of emotions: grief over losing Caleb, anger at the aliens, and fear for her own safety. But beneath all those feelings, there was something else. Determination. She couldn't let them get away with what they had done. Caleb's death wouldn't be in vain. If the aliens thought humans were weak and easy to push around, she would show them just how wrong they were. Emma took a deep breath and wiped her tears. She needed a plan. The station wasn't heavily armed. It wasn't designed for combat, but maybe there was something she could use too. Defend herself. She remembered hearing rumors about a hidden storage area when she first arrived at Delta 7. Some of the previous researchers who worked here had been experimenting with advanced technology, though no one ever told her exactly what it was. At the time, she didn't think much of it. Now, it might be her only chance. She stood up and walked to the far end of the station, where a locked door led to a restricted section. The keycard required to open it was kept in Caleb's toolbox. Always carried it in case they needed access to spare parts stored there. With trembling hands, Emma retrieved the keycard from his toolbox and swiped it through the scanner. The door hissed open, revealing a small room filled with crates and shelves. In the center of the room was a large metal case, sealed tightly, and marked with warning labels. Emma hesitated for a moment. Whatever was inside this case, it clearly wasn't meant to be used lightly. But she didn't have a choice. She opened the case and found two things inside: a sleek plasma rifle that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie, and a strange helmet covered in wires and sensors. A note attached to the helmet read, "Neural Interface Prototype. Amplifies. User reflexes and cognitive abilities. Use with caution." Emma stared at the items, her heart pounding. This was exactly what she needed, if it worked. She picked up the rifle first, testing its weight in her hands. It felt solid and powerful, but she knew she couldn't rely on brute force alone. The helmet was the real game changer. If it could make her faster and smarter, she might stand a chance against the aliens. Taking a deep breath, she strapped the helmet onto her head and activated it. At first, nothing happened. Then, a sudden surge of energy coursed through her. Body colors seemed brighter, sounds sharper, and her thoughts clearer than ever before. She blinked, disoriented, as the world around her slowed down. When she moved her hand, It felt like she was controlling it with perfect precision, as if every muscle in her body was perfectly in sync. She glanced at the translator device lying nearby and realized she could predict which buttons to press before even thinking about it. Emma stepped back outside cautiously, clutching the plasma rifle. The aliens were still near the station, examining the mining equipment. They hadn't noticed her yet. One of them turned toward her, raising its weapon, but Emma reacted instantly. Before the alien could fire, she aimed the plasma rifle and pulled the trigger. A bolt of blue energy shot out, striking the alien squarely in the chest. It staggered backward, collapsing to the ground. The other aliens froze, their clicking voices growing louder and more frantic. Emma didn't give them a chance to regroup. Moving with speed and precision, enhanced by the neural interface, she darted between cover, firing precise shots that took down several more of the creatures. Each movement felt natural, almost instinctive, as if her body knew exactly what to do without her having to think about it. But the aliens weren't giving up easily. One of them raised a device that emitted a low hum, creating a shimmering barrier around itself. Emma fired at the barrier, but the bolts of energy bounced off harmlessly. Frustrated, she scanned the situation quickly, analyzing the aliens' movements and the behavior of the barrier. Suddenly, an idea came to her. Instead of attacking directly, she adjusted the settings on her rifle, switching it to a frequency that matched the barrier's vibrations. When she fired again, the barrier destabilized. Collapsing in a flash of light, the alien stumbled, exposed and vulnerable. Emma seized the opportunity, firing another shot that knocked it off its feet. As it lay incapacitated, she approached. Cautiously pointing the rifle at it, using the translator device, she demanded answers. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The alien clicked rapidly, and the translator provided a response. Resources depleted. Survival imperative. Emma frowned. So they weren't just invaders. They were desperate. That didn't excuse what they had done to Caleb, but it gave her some context. Still, she wasn't about to let them walk away. "Leave now," she said firmly, "or I'll make sure none of you leave alive." The remaining aliens exchanged nervous clicks, clearly unsettled by Emma's unexpected skill and aggression. Slowly, they began retreating toward their ship, dragging their injured comrades with them. Emma watched them go, her grip tightening on the rifle. She wanted to chase them down to finish what she had started, but she knew better than to pursue them blindly. For now, they were leaving, and that was enough. Back inside the station, Emma removed the helmet, feeling the effects of the neural interface fade. Her body ached, and her head throbbed with exhaustion. The helmet had given her incredible power, but it had also taken a toll. She collapsed into a chair, staring at the weapon in her hands. What had she just done? She had fought off a group of highly advanced aliens using technology she barely understood. It felt surreal, like something out of a dream, more a nightmare. Her thoughts drifted back to Caleb. He was gone, and nothing could bring him back. But maybe, just maybe, his death could serve a greater purpose. These aliens had underestimated humanity, assuming they were weak and defenseless. Emma had proven them wrong, and she intended to keep proving them wrong. If they came back, and she suspected they would, she would be ready. As she sat there, trying to process everything that had happened, Emma realized something important. The aliens hadn't just made a mistake by killing Caleb. They had awakened something in her. Fierce determination to protect what was hers, no matter the cost. And if they dared to return, they would quickly come to regret their actions. The aliens didn't leave immediately. After retreating to their ship, they hovered nearby, their massive vessel casting a shadow over the asteroid's surface. Emma watched them from inside the station, her eyes glued to the window. She knew they weren't done, not yet. They had come for resources, and they wouldn't give up that easily. But something about their behavior had changed. Instead of charging forward recklessly like before, they seemed cautious now, almost hesitant. Emma wasn't sure what to make of it. Maybe they were planning another attack. Or maybe they were trying to figure out how to deal with her. Either way, she couldn't afford to let her guard down. She spent the next few hours preparing for whatever might come next. The plasma rifle was still fully charged, and she kept the neural interface helmet close by, ready to use again if needed. But she also knew she couldn't rely on the helmet indefinitely. Every time she used it, her body felt weaker afterward, as if it was draining her energy. She would have to be careful. While she waited, Emma tried to gather more information about the aliens. She turned on the station's long-range scanners, hoping to pick up any signals or communications coming from their ship. At first, all she heard was static. Then faintly, she caught snippets of their clicking language. It sounded different this time, less aggressive, more urgent. Using the translator device, she pieced together fragments of their conversation, unanticipated resistance. Human capabilities unknown, potential threat. Emma frowned, so they were scared. Good. That meant her earlier attack had shaken their confidence. But it also meant they wouldn't underestimate her again. If they came back, they would be better prepared. She needed to stay one step ahead. As night fell o'er what passed for night on the asteroid, the station grew quiet. The only sounds were the hum of machinery and the occasional creak of metal as the structure shifted slightly in response to the asteroid's rotation. Emma sat in the control room, staring at the monitors. Her mind raced with questions. Were these aliens? Where had they come from? And why had they chosen Delta 7? She decided to take a closer look at the alien ship. Carefully, she slipped outside, keeping low and sticking to the shadows. The helmet gave her an edge, allowing her to move silently and avoid detection. As she crept closer to the ship, she noticed something strange. There were markings etched into its surface symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. They looked like some kind of writing, though she couldn't read it. She snapped a few pictures with her handheld device, hoping to analyze them later. Suddenly, a loud click echoed through the air, startling her. One of the aliens emerged from the ship, carrying a device that looked like a scanner. It moved slowly, methodically sweeping the area with its glowing instrument. Emma froze, holding her breath. The alien was close to close. If it spotted her, she wouldn't have time to react. But then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the alien turned and headed back toward the ship. Emma exhaled slowly, her heart pounding. That had been too close. She retreated to the station, her mind racing. Whatever the aliens were doing, they were planning something. She needed to act fast. Back inside, she reviewed the images she had taken of the alien symbols, using the station's computer. She cross-referenced them with known languages and patterns. But to her surprise, the symbols matched a database entry labeled Varaxian. According to the file, the Varaxians were a highly intelligent but ruthless species known for their resource-harvesting missions. They traveled across the galaxy, stripping planets and asteroids of valuable materials to sustain their dying homeworld. Emma's stomach sank. These weren't just random invaders. They were scavengers, driven by desperation. Their home planet was dying, and they would do anything to survive. In a way, she could understand their motives. Survival was a powerful motivator, but that didn't excuse what they had done to Calibor, what they might still do to her. The next morning, the Varaxians made their move. Their ship descended even lower, hovering directly above the mining equipment. Emma watched as several of them disembarked, carrying tools and devices she didn't recognize. They began dismantling the drills and loading the parts onto floating platforms. It was clear they intended to take everything they could carry. Emma clenched her fists. She couldn't let them steal the station's resources, not after everything they had done. Grabbing the plasma rifle and strapping on the helmet, she stepped outside once again. This time she didn't bother hiding. She walked straight toward them, her weapon raised. One of the Varaxians noticed her immediately and clicked sharply, alerting the others. Hey! They turned to face her, their weapons trained on her chest. Emma didn't flinch, the helmet enhancing. Her reflexes, she felt unstoppable. She fired the first shot, taking down two of them before they could react. The others scattered, returning fire. Bolts of energy whizzed past her, narrowly missing her head. She ducked behind a pile of crates, catching her breath. The battle intensified. Emma darted from cover to cover, picking off the Varaxians one by one. Each shot was precise, each movement calculated. The helmet made her feel invincible, but it also pushed her to her limits. Her vision blurred, and her muscles burned with exhaustion. Still, she pressed on, determined to protect what was hers. Finally, only one Varaxian remained. It stood near the ship, clutching a small device in its hands. Emma recognized it instantly. It was the same type of containment field generator she had seen earlier. Without hesitation, she charged forward, dodging blasts of energy as she closed the distance between them. Just as the Varaxian activated the device, creating a shimmering dome around itself, Emma adjusted her rifle settings and fired. The containment field destabilized, trapping the Varaxian inside. It struggled futilely, clicking frantically as it realized it was caught. Emma approached cautiously, pointing her weapon at it. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her voice cold and steady. The translator provided an answer. Resources depleted. Homeworld dying. No alternatives. What? Emma stared at the creature, torn between anger and pity. She wanted to hate it, to blame it for Caleb's death, but she couldn't ignore the truth. These aliens were desperate, just like anyone else fighting to survive. Still, that didn't mean she had to forgive them. "Leave," she said finally. "Take your ship and go. If I see you again, I won't hesitate to kill you." Avraxian hesitated, then nodded. Slowly, it backed away, retreating toward the ship. Moments later, the vessel lifted off, disappearing into the sky. Emma stood there for a long time, watching the horizon. She had won for now, but she knew the fight wasn't over. The Varaxians would report back to their leaders, and sooner or later, reinforcements would arrive. When that happened, she would need to be ready. Inside the station, she removed the helmet, feeling the effects fade. Her body ached, and her mind felt foggy, but she forced herself to stay focused. She had proven that humanity wasn't weak or defenseless. If the Varaxians underestimated humans again, they would live to regret it. The Varaxian ship disappeared into the blackness of space, leaving behind a trail of glowing particles that slowly faded. Emma stood outside the station, her chest rising and falling as she tried to catch her breath. The battle had drained her physically, mentally and emotionally, but she knew she couldn't rest yet. There was still so much to do. Inside the station, she collapsed onto a chair, her body trembling from exhaustion. Her hands were sore from gripping the plasma rifle, and her head throbbed with a dull ache. The neural interface helmet lay on the table in front of her, its wires tangled like a spider's web. She stared at it, feeling equal parts gratitude and dread. It had saved her life, but it had also pushed her to her limits. Every time she used it, she felt weaker afterward, as if it was sapping her strength. Still, she couldn't deny how effective it had been. Without it, she would have been no match for the Varaxians. Emma forced herself to stand up. She needed to assess the damage. The aliens hadn't taken everything, but they had destroyed several pieces of equipment during their raid. Mining drills were bent and broken, control panels sparked with exposed wires, and part of the station's outer wall had been scorched by energy blasts. Repairs would take days, maybe even weeks if she could manage them alone. As she worked, her thoughts kept drifting back to Caleb. His absence was everywhere, in the empty workstation where he used to tinker with machines, in the silence that filled the station without his cheerful whistling, in the weight of knowing she would never hear his voice again. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. Crying wouldn't bring him back. What mattered now was making sure his death wasn't meaningless. She decided to send a message to Earth, using the station's long-range transmitter. She recorded a detailed report of what had happened, the arrival of the Varaxians, their attack, and her defense against them. She included photos of the alien ship and the symbols she had captured earlier, hoping someone on Earth might be able to analyze them further. When she checked the estimated delivery time for the transmission, her heart sank. Due to the vast distance between Delta 7 and Earth, the message would take weeks to reach its destination, and any response would take just as long. Emma sighed, frustration bubbling inside her. She was completely alone out here, with no immediate help coming. If the Varaxians returned, or worse, if more of them came, she would have to face them on her own. That thought terrified her. But beneath the fear was something else: resolve. She'd already proven she could fight back. If they came again, she would be ready. Over the next few days, Emma threw herself into preparing for another attack. She scavenged parts from the damaged equipment to reinforce the station's defenses. She set up traps around the perimeter hidden, explosives and tripwires designed to slow down anyone approaching the station. She also spent hours studying the neural interface helmet, trying to understand how it worked. The notes left by the previous researchers were sparse and technical, but she pieced together enough information to realize the helmet wasn't just amplifying her reflexes. It was unlocking hidden potential within her brain. The more she learned, the more uneasy she felt. The helmet was experimental, untested, and potentially dangerous. Prolonged use could cause permanent damage or worse. Yet, she couldn't imagine facing the Varaxians without it. It gave her an edge, a way to level the playing field against beings far stronger and more advanced than humans. She resolved to use it sparingly, only in moments of absolute necessity. One evening, as she sat reviewing the data she had collected about the Varaxians, something caught her eye. Among the fragments of their language translated by the device, there was a recurring phrase: anomaly detected. At first, she dismissed it as irrelevant, a glitch in the translation software, but then she noticed it appeared multiple times, always in context related to her. The Varaxians weren't just talking about resources or strategies, they were discussing her. Emma's stomach tightened. They had seen what she was capable of, and it had unsettled them. To them, she was an anomaly and unpredictable variable they couldn't account for. She realized this was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it meant they feared her. On the other, it meant they would likely send reinforcements specifically trained to deal with threats like her. The realization weighed heavily on her. She couldn't keep fighting forever. Sooner or later, the odds would tip too far in their favor. But giving up wasn't an option. Not after everything she had been through. She owed it to Caleb and to herself to keep going, to distract herself from the looming threat. Emma focused on small tasks: cleaning the station, organizing supplies, and repairing what little equipment she could salvage. These mundane chores gave her a sense of control, a reminder that not everything in her world was falling apart. Still, the loneliness gnawed at her. Conversations with Caleb replayed in her mind, his laughter echoing in the empty corridors. She missed him more than words could express. One night, unable to sleep, she stepped outside to look at the stars. The asteroid's surface was cold and barren, but the sky above was breathtaking. Countless pinpricks of light stretched endlessly in every direction, each one representing a distant sun, a planet, or perhaps even another civilization. Emma wondered how many others like her were out there, people fighting to survive, to protect what mattered most to them. Her thoughts turned to humanity as a whole. For all its flaws, humanity had something unique: resilience. Humans had faced countless challenges throughout history: wars, diseases, natural disasters, and somehow they had always found a way to persevere. Maybe that was why the Varaxians underestimated them. They saw humans as fragile, insignificant creatures clinging to a tiny rock in space. What they didn't understand was that humans' greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons, it was their spirit. Emma smiled faintly, a spark of hope igniting within her. No matter what happened next, she would hold on to that spirit. She would fight not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in the power of humanity to overcome even the darkest odds. As she stood there, gazing at the stars, she made a silent promise. If the Varaxians came back, she wouldn't back down. She would show them exactly what humans were capable of, and she would make them regret ever setting foot on Delta 7. Days turned into weeks, and the asteroid remained eerily quiet. The Varaxians hadn't returned, but Emma knew better than to let her guard down. She spent her time preparing for their inevitable comeback, reinforcing the station's defenses, and practicing with the plasma rifle. Each session left her more confident in her abilities, though the strain of using the neural interface helmet grew harder to ignore. Her headaches became sharper, her muscles weaker, and her thoughts sometimes foggy. Still, she refused to give up. One morning, As Emma was checking the perimeter traps, the station's sensors blared to life. A large object was approaching fast, far larger than the Varaxian ship she had encountered before. Her heart raced as she rushed inside to confirm the readings. It wasn't just one ship this time. Dozens of vessels filled the sky, their sleek forms glinting ominously in the dim light. They formed a ring around Delta 7, cutting off any chance of escape. Emma clenched her fists, her mind racing. This was at the moment she had been dreading. The Varaxians had returned, and they weren't taking any chances. Their earlier hesitation was gone, replaced by overwhelming force. She could see them deploying drones and armored units, clearly prepared for resistance. There was no way she could take on an entire fleet alone. But running wasn't an option either. She had made her stand here. She intended to see it through. She strapped on the neural interface helmet, ignoring the warning signs flashing in her mind. The surge of energy coursed through her body, sharpening her senses and steadying her nerves. She grabbed the plasma rifle and stepped outside, ready to face whatever came her way. The first wave of attackers descended quickly, drones zipping through the air like mechanical insects. Emma fired without hesitation, each shot hitting its mark with deadly precision. The helmet amplified her reflexes, allowing her to dodge incoming fire while maintaining her focus. One drone exploded midair, sending shards of metal raining down. Another crashed into the ground, its circuits sparking wildly. But for every drone she destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Emma retreated behind a pile of crates, catching her breath. The helmet's effects were stronger this time, almost intoxicating. Her movements felt fluid and effortless, as if she was dancing through the chaos. Yet, the toll on her body was undeniable. Her vision blurred at the edges, and her limbs felt heavier with each passing second. She shook it off, reminding herself that she couldn't afford to falter, not now. From the corner of her eye, she spotted a group of Varaxian soldiers advancing toward the station. Unlike the ones she had faced before, these creatures wore thick armor and carried advanced weapons. Their leader, a towering figure with glowing markings etched into its exoskeleton, gestured sharply, directing the others to fan out. Emma recognized him immediately. Crix, the commander she had overheard mentioned in their earlier transmissions. He was the one calling the shots. Emma adjusted her strategy, focusing on the weakest points in their formation, fired a series of rapid shots, targeting the joints in their armor where they were most vulnerable. Two of the soldiers collapsed, writhing in pain, but the rest pressed forward relentlessly. Crix himself remained untouched, his expression unreadable beneath his gleaming visor. Realizing she couldn't hold them off indefinitely, Emma decided to take the fight to them. Using the helmet's enhanced cognition, she analyzed the battlefield, looking for an opening. Spotting a transport pod abandoned near the edge of the asteroid, she formulated a risky plan. If she could hijack the pod and infiltrate their mothership, she might be able to disable their forces from within. Moving quickly, she darted toward the pod, weaving between blasts of energy. The Varaxians pursued her, their weapons firing non-stop. Emma's heart pounded as she leapt into the cockpit, slamming her hand down on the controls. The pod roared to life, lifting off the ground just as a bolt of energy grazed its hull. She gritted her teeth and accelerated, heading straight for the largest ship in the fleet. Inside the vessel, alarms blared as the pod docked. Emma emerged, cautiously, her rifle raised. The corridors were dimly lit, lined with strange machinery and pulsating conduits. She moved silently, relying on the helmet to anticipate enemy movements. Groups of Varaxian crew members scrambled past her, too focused on their tasks to notice her presence. She avoided direct confrontation, slipping through doors and climbing maintenance ladders until she reached the central command chamber. Crix was there, surrounded by holographic displays, showing the battle unfolding below. His clicking voice echoed through the room as he barked orders to his subordinates. Emma took aim, her finger hovering over the trigger. For a moment she considered ending it right then and there with one shot. She could eliminate the leader and cripple their operation. But something stopped her. Killing him wouldn't solve anything. She needed to send a message, one that would make the Varaxians think twice about underestimating humanity ever again, instead of firing. Emma activated the pod's self-destruct sequence remotely. Then, using the station's transmitter, she broadcast a final message to the entire fleet. "You came here thinking we were weak," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "But you were wrong. Humans don't give up. We adapt. We fight. And we win. If you want to survive, leave us alone." The countdown began, red lights flashing throughout the ship. Panic erupted among the Vraxians as they realized what was happening. Crick stared at her, his multifaceted eyes narrowing in fury. Before he could react, Emma slipped away, retracing her steps back to the pod. As she launched herself clear of the ship, a massive explosion rocked the asteroid, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. Debris rained down, and the remaining Vracian vessels scattered. Fleeing the scene back at the station, Emma collapsed onto the floor, the helmet falling from her head. Her body ached, and her mind felt numb, but she managed a small smile. She had done it. Against all odds, she had driven them away. Caleb's death had not been in vain. He had inspired her to fight for something greater than herself. As she gazed at the stars once more, Emma knew the galaxy was vast and full of dangers. But she also knew that humanity had proven itself capable of standing tall against even the most formidable foes. If anyone doubted that again, they would live to regret it. The explosion of the Vraxian mothership lit up the sky like a second sun, its fiery glow reflecting off the asteroid's rocky surface. Emma sat on the cold metal floor of the station, her body trembling with exhaustion. She had done it. She had driven the Vraxians away. But the victory felt hollow. The cost had been high. The weight of everything she had endured pressed down on her chest like a heavy stone. Her thoughts drifted to Caleb. He had been her friend, her partner in this lonely corner of space. His laughter, his kindness, his unwavering optimism, it was all gone now. The silence of the station felt heavier without him. Emma closed her eyes, trying to picture his face, but all she could see was the moment he fell, struck down by the Vraxians' cruel indifference. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. Crying wouldn't bring him back. What mattered now was honoring his memory by staying strong. The next few days were a blur. Emma worked tirelessly to repair the damage caused by the battle. The station was in shambles, walls scorched, equipment destroyed, and supplies dwindling. She scavenged what she could from the wreckage, piecing things together as best she could. Her hands were raw from gripping tools and handling jagged metal, but she didn't stop. Keeping busy helped distract her from the ache in her heart. Despite her efforts, the neural interface helmet weighed heavily on her mind. Each time she used it, she felt weaker afterward, her body struggling to recover. The headaches grew worse, sometimes leaving her unable to focus for hours at a time. She knew the helmet wasn't meant for prolonged use, but she couldn't imagine facing another threat without it. It was a double-edged sword, a tool that gave her strength but also drained her life force. One evening, she sat reviewing the data she had collected about the Vraxians. A message arrived from Earth. It was the first communication she had received since sending her report weeks earlier. The delay had been frustrating, but now finally, someone was responding. The message was brief but clear. Reinforcements were on the way. A rescue team would arrive in a matter of weeks to assess the situation and provide support. Emma read the message over and over, relief washing over her. Help was coming. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to hope. She wouldn't have to face this alone anymore. Still, the thought of leaving Delta 7 filled her with mixed emotions. This place had been her home, even if it was harsh and unforgiving. And Caleb's memory was tied to every corner of the station. How could she walk away? As she waited for the rescue team, Emma spent her time reflecting on everything that had happened. She thought about the Vraxians, their desperation, their fear, their ruthlessness. They weren't so different from humans in some ways. Both species were driven by survival, willing to do whatever it took to protect their own. There was one key difference: humanity's resilience. Humans didn't just survive, they adapted, they fought, they thrived. That was something the Vraxians had failed to understand. the day the rescue ship arrived. Emma stood outside the station, watching as it descended from the sky. Its sleek design and Earth insignia brought a lump to her throat. She hadn't realized how much she missed the sight of something familiar until now. As the hatch opened, a group of people emerged, clad in uniforms and carrying medical kits. One of them approached her, a man named Daniel, who introduced himself as the leader of the team. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Emma nodded, though she wasn't sure if it was true. Physically, she was battered and bruised, but emotionally, she felt like she was still reeling. Daniel seemed to sense this. "You've been through a lot," he said. "We're here to help." The team quickly got to work, assessing the damage to the station and tending to Emma's injuries. They marveled at her story, listening intently as she recounted her battles with the Varaxians. Some of them looked at her with admiration, while others seemed wary, as if unsure whether to believe her. Emma didn't blame them. Someone had told her a few months ago that she would single-handedly fend off an alien invasion. She wouldn't have believed it either. One of the team members, a scientist named Rachel, took a particular interest in the neural interface helmet. She examined it closely, her brow furrowed in concern. "This technology is incredible," she said, "but it's dangerous. Prolonged use could cause permanent damage or worse." Emma nodded. She already knew the risks, but hearing them confirmed made her stomach churn. Rachel promised to take the helmet back to Earth for further study, ensuring it wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. As the days passed, Emma began to feel a glimmer of normalcy returning. The presence of other humans reminded her that she wasn't alone in the universe. Conversations with the team helped ease the loneliness that had haunted her since Caleb's death. They shared stories about Earth, about families and friends waiting for them back home. Emma listened quietly, imagining what it would be like to return to a world she hadn't seen in years. But leaving Delta 7 wasn't easy. On her final night at the station, Emma walked through its corridors one last time. She paused at Caleb's workstation, running her fingers over the tools he had left behind. A part of her wanted to stop to keep fighting, to prove that humanity could stand against any threat. But another part of her knew it was time to let go. The next morning, Emma boarded the rescue ship alongside the team. As it lifted off, she watched Delta 7 shrink into the distance, its battered silhouette disappearing against the backdrop of stars. Her heart ached, but she also felt a strange sense of peace. She had survived. She had fought. She had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. Back on Earth, Emma became a symbol of hope and resilience. Her story spread, quickly inspiring millions. Scientists studied the neural interface helmet, unlocking new possibilities for human potential. Politicians debated how to prepare for future encounters with extraterrestrial life, using Emma's experience as a cautionary tale. For her part, Emma tried to adjust to life on Earth, though it felt foreign after so many years in space. She kept in touch with the team, forming bonds that helped her heal. Still, there were moments when she gazed at the stars and wondered about the Varaxians. Had they learned their lesson? Would they ever return? Emma didn't know, and perhaps that uncertainty was the hardest part. But one thing was certain: if they did come back, humanity would be ready, because humans were survivors. They adapted, they fought, and they never gave up. As Emma stood on a quiet hilltop one evening watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, she smiled faintly. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but she no longer feared it. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she and humanity would face them together. And if anyone doubted that again, they would live to regret it.